He stood by her coffin in the heat of Ceará, holding her mother's hands, weeping like a devastated widower. For 10 days, 40-year-old Alex Leandro played the perfect role of a grieving husband. He accepted the condolences of a heartbroken community. He looked into the eyes of the woman who gave birth to his wife and shared her pain. But while he was performing this act of mourning thousands of miles away, a security camera recording in a sterile hallway in São Paulo was playing a very different scene to detectives. It didn't show a loving husband trying to save a suicidal wife. It showed a hunt. It showed a predator cornering his prey moments before she fell 10 stories to her death. This is the story of a dream that turned into a nightmare, and how a single piece of digital evidence stripped the mask off a killer. Welcome to Brazil's Crime Vault. Today we are investigating the case of Maria Catiana Gomes da Silva, a tragedy that exposes the dark side of the influencer dream and the brutal reality of domestic violence hidden behind closed doors. If you appreciate in-depth, respectful investigations into cases the world needs to see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel right now. It really helps us bring more cases to light and give a voice to those who can no longer speak. The distance between Crateús, a sun-drenched city in the arid backlands of the state of Ceará, and the grey, towering skyline of São Paulo is more than just 1,800 miles. It is a journey that thousands of Brazilians make every year, crossing the continent in search of a future that their hometowns cannot always promise. It is a migration of hope. For 25-year-old Maria Catiana Gomes da Silva, that journey was supposed to be the beginning of a new life. She was young, vibrant, and possessed that specific kind of modern ambition that defines our current era. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be an influencer. She dreamed of a digital career, of connecting with people, of turning her charisma into a livelihood. But on November 29th, that dream ended on the cold pavement of a condominium complex in Morumbi, one of São Paulo's most contrasting neighborhoods. Maria Catiana fell from the 10th floor of the apartment she shared with her partner. In the immediate aftermath, the narrative seemed tragically simple, at least according to the only other person in that apartment. It was presented as a moment of despair, a sudden act of self-destruction during a heated argument, a suicide. But as the body of the young woman was being prepared for the long journey back to her grieving mother in the northeast, a different story was waiting to be told. It was a story stored on a hard drive in the building's security room. While her partner, Alex Leandro Bispo dos Santos, traveled across the country to stand by her coffin, the state-level investigative police in São Paulo were watching a horror movie unfold frame by frame. The camera doesn't lie, and what it showed was not a loving husband trying to save a desperate wife, but a predator hunting his prey in the sterile hallway of a luxury building. This is the case of the influencer, the 10th floor, and the man who thought he could mourn the woman he destroyed. To understand the gravity of this case, we first need to understand who Maria Catiana was. In the photos that remain on her social media profiles, you see a woman full of life. She had a smile that seemed to take up the whole frame. Crateús, her hometown, is a place where everyone knows everyone, a community built on strong family ties. Leaving such a place requires courage. Moving to São Paulo, the largest metropolis in the southern hemisphere, is daunting. It is a city of 12 million people, a place of immense opportunity but also profound isolation. Catiana moved there with Alex Leandro. The age gap between them was significant, 15 years. She was 25 in the prime of her youth, he was 40. In the dynamics of domestic violence, which we analyze so often on this channel, such an age gap can sometimes, though not always, indicate a power imbalance. A dynamic where one partner has more life experience, perhaps more financial control, and the other is in a position of dependency. They lived in Morumbi. For those unfamiliar with São Paulo's geography, Morumbi is a complex neighborhood. It houses some of the wealthiest mansions in Brazil, right next to some of the largest favelas. The building they lived in was a symbol of that middle-class aspiration, security, height, status. It was the kind of place where you feel safe, where the violence of the streets isn't supposed to reach you. But as criminologists often point out, the most dangerous place for a woman is rarely a dark alleyway. It is often her own living room. On the night of November 29th, the silence of that condominium was shattered. When first responders arrived, the scene was chaotic. A fall from 10 stories is catastrophic. There is no survival. The trauma to the body is immense. For the police officers arriving at the scene, the priority is always to preserve life, but when that is no longer possible, the location becomes a crime scene. However, in cases of falls from heights, the initial ambiguity is the killer's greatest ally. Unlike a shooting or a stabbing, where the weapon is evident, a fall can be an accident, a suicide, or a murder. The physics of the body on the ground can tell a story, but it takes time for forensics to read it. Alex Leandro was there. He presented himself as the grieving partner. His version of events was classic, almost textbook for these scenarios. He claimed they had argued. He claimed she was unstable. He claimed that in a fit of sudden, uncontrollable emotion, she had thrown herself from the window before he could stop her. This narrative, the hysterical woman trope, is a powerful shield. It plays into societal biases. It suggests that the woman was fragile, that she was the architect of her own demise, and for a few days that narrative held. In the chaos of bureaucracy, of releasing the body, of notifying the family, Alex remained a free man. He was not immediately handcuffed, he was not thrown into a cell. He was treated as a witness, a survivor of a tragedy. This freedom allowed him to perform the most macabre act of this entire tragedy. He accompanied Maria Catian's body back to Ceará. Imagine the scene. The long flight or drive back to the northeast, the arrival in Crateus, the heat of the semi-arid region, the house full of weeping relatives, and there in the center of it all was Alex. He stood by the coffin. He hugged Catian's mother. He accepted the sympathy of her friends. He played the role of the widower perfectly. It is a level of coldness that is difficult to comprehend. To look into the eyes of a mother whose daughter you have just hurt, and to accept her comfort requires a complete lack of empathy. It suggests a psychopathic trait, the ability to compartmentalize, to wear a mask so tight that it becomes a second skin. But while Alex was performing his role in Crateus, the investigation in São Paulo was shifting gears. The 89th District Police Station, responsible for the area, is staffed by detectives who have seen this narrative before. In Brazil, the protocol for investigating suicides of women in domestic settings has become much stricter in recent years due to the alarming rates of femicide. The police no longer take the partner's word at face value. They look for inconsistencies. And in a modern condominium, the walls have eyes. The investigators requested the footage from the building's internal security cameras. This is standard procedure, but in this case it was the key that unlocked the truth. The footage recovered from the hallway of the 10th floor on the night of November 29th destroyed Alex's story of a sudden suicide. The video is disturbing. It does not show a loving couple having a verbal disagreement. It shows a hunt. In the footage, which has since been analyzed by forensic experts, Maria Catiani is seen running. She is not running towards the window. She is running away from Alex. She is in the hallway, the common area of the building. This is a crucial detail. She had managed to get out of the apartment. She was seeking safety. Alex pursues her. He is aggressive. The footage captures him cornering her. He strikes her. He punches her. The violence is raw and undeniable. It is not a defensive gesture. It is an attack. At one point, the physical disparity becomes painfully clear. He is larger, stronger, and fueled by rage. She is terrified. The most chilling part of the footage is that it establishes the animus necandi, the intent to harm or at least the total disregard for her life. It also dismantles the timeline of a sudden jump. A woman who is being beaten in the hallway and dragged back into the apartment does not simply decide to jump moments later. She is forced. When the police saw these images, the classification of the case changed immediately. It was no longer a suspicious death or a suicide investigation. It was a homicide. It was a femicide. The request for a temporary arrest warrant was drafted with urgency. The detectives knew they were dealing with a man who was not only violent, but also capable of fleeing, capable of manipulation. By the time the warrant was issued, Alex was still in the northeast or perhaps on his way back, believing his performance had worked. He likely thought that by going to the funeral, he had cemented his innocence in the eyes of the family and the public. He didn't know that the digital eye of the camera had already convicted him in the eyes of the law. The operation to capture him was coordinated. He was located and arrested around December 9th or 10th, roughly 10 days after the crime. When the police handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the mask fell. The grieving widower was replaced by the prime suspect in a brutal murder. He was brought back to face the justice system in São Paulo. To truly grasp the magnitude of this crime, we must peel back the layers of Alex Leandro's behavior. It is not enough to simply say he killed her. We must look at the psychological architecture required to maintain such a lie. Criminologists often refer to this post-crime behavior as staging, but Alex took staging to a geographical extreme. Most killers who stage a suicide do so within the home. They plant a note, they wipe fingerprints. Alex staged his innocence across state lines. By traveling to Ceará, he was engaging in a high-stakes gamble known as impression management. In his mind, if he could convince the mother, the person with the strongest intuition about her daughter, that he was grieving, then the police would be just a formality. This suggests a personality trait often found in coercive controllers, a profound arrogance. He believed his acting skills were superior to the forensic capabilities of the São Paulo police. He bet on the emotional chaos of the family to blind them to the truth. It is a manipulation tactic that weaponizes the family's grief against them. While they were crying for Katian, he was crying for himself, for the life he was trying to preserve. Furthermore, we need to discuss the specific vulnerability of Maria Katiane. In sociology, there is a concept called social isolation, which is a key risk factor in intimate partner homicide. Katian was thousands of miles away from her support network. In Cretius, she had brothers, a mother, neighbors who had known her since birth. In São Paulo, inside that apartment in Morumbi, her world had likely shrunk to just her and Alex. This isolation is often not accidental. It is cultivated by abusive partners. They move the victim away. They subtly discourage contact with family. They become the sole source of affection, finance, and reality. When the conflict started in that hallway, Katian didn't have a neighbor she could easily run to, or a cousin down the street. She was alone in a concrete tower, surrounded by strangers, with the man who claimed to love her becoming her executioner. Let's look closer at the forensic mechanics of the fall, a crucial aspect that the prosecution will undoubtedly highlight during the trial. The science of defenestration, the act of throwing someone out of a window, is precise. A person who jumps by their own volition usually pushes off. There is a horizontal velocity. They clear the building's ledge by a certain distance. A person who is dropped or pushed while unconscious or resisting falls differently. Their body might strike the building on the way down, or land in a position that indicates a lack of defensive reflexes. The peritos, forensic experts in São Paulo, are among the best in Latin America. They would have measured the exact distance from the wall to the point of impact. They would have analyzed the drag coefficients. If Katian's body landed in a dead drop zone, it physically contradicts the narrative of a running jump. The physics of her death are as much a witness as the camera in the hallway. And what about the camera itself? We live in an era of the panopticon, where we are constantly watched. Usually this is seen as an invasion of privacy. But in cases of domestic violence, the camera is often the only voice the victim has left. The footage from the hallway does more than just show a fight. It establishes the timeline of terror. It shows the de-escalation attempts by the victim and the re-escalation by the aggressor. It destroys the heat of passion defense. A crime of passion implies a momentary lapse of reason. But a pursuit down a hallway, a beating, dragging a victim back into an apartment, and then the subsequent fall, this is a sequence of choices. At every step, the first punch, the drag, the lift, Alex had a choice to stop. He made the choice to continue. That is what transforms a manslaughter charge into first-degree murder with qualifiers. We must also contextualize the influencer dream. To an American audience, the idea of moving to a big city to become famous is as old as Hollywood. But in Brazil, the digital influencer path is seen as one of the few ways to bypass the rigid class structures. For a girl from the interior of the Northeast, the internet is a portal to a life that traditional jobs can't offer. Alex, at 40, belonged to a different generation. Did he resent her focus on the screen? Did he feel threatened by the attention she was seeking from the world? While we cannot diagnose him, we know that in many femicides involving digital presence, the smartphone becomes a third party in the relationship, an object of jealousy and a catalyst for violence. The phone represents freedom, connection to the outside world, and potential independence, all things a controlling partner seeks to eliminate. Finally, let's explain the legal road ahead in the Brazilian Tribunal do Júri. Unlike the US system, where a unanimous verdict is often required, or where plea deals resolve most cases, Brazil handles intentional crimes against life with a specific jury system. 7 jurors are chosen. They do not deliberate together. They vote secretly on specific questions asked by the judge. Did Alex cause the death? Did he use cruel means? Did he make defense impossible? A simple majority of 4-3 is enough to convict. This system is designed to reflect the conscience of society. The prosecutors will not just be arguing law, they will be arguing morality. They will ask the jury to look at the photos of Catian's smiling face in Crateus, and then look at the footage of her final moments in Morumbi. They will ask the jury to send a message that the honor or anger of a man is not worth the life of a woman. Alex Leandro Bispo dos Santos thought he could write the ending of this story. He thought he could direct the scene, play the lead role of the grieving survivor, and walk away when the curtains closed. But he forgot that in the modern world, the camera is always rolling. He forgot that forensic science speaks a language that lies cannot silence. And he underestimated the determination of a mother and a justice system that has grown tired of seeing women fall from towers while men walk free. But beyond the legal technicalities, we must look at the human cost. Maria Catiane's family in Crateus is devastated twice over, first by the loss of their daughter and second by the betrayal. Imagine the mother who hugged Alex at the funeral. She comforted the man who days earlier had beaten her daughter and allegedly thrown her to her death. That psychological violation is a wound that may never heal. It is a specific kind of cruelty that leaves the survivors questioning their own judgment, their own perception of reality. How did I not see it? How did I let him into my house? These are the questions that will haunt them. The neighbor's testimony will also be crucial in the upcoming trial. In apartment complexes, sound travels. Did they hear the screams? Did they hear the thud? In many cases, neighbors hesitate to call the police during a domestic argument because they don't want to interfere. This culture of silence is something that Brazilian authorities are trying desperately to change. The campaign Em briga de marido e mulher se mete a colher sim. In a fight between husband and wife, you do put your spoon in, you do interfere, is a direct response to this. In Catian's case, the intervention came too late. As Alex sits in a preventive detention cell in São Paulo, the legal process begins. He will face a jury trial, Tribunal do Júri. In Brazil, intentional crimes against life are judged by a jury of 7 common citizens, not a judge. The judge presides, but the people decide. The prosecutor will show the jury the footage. They will show the photos of Catian. They will play the tapes of Alex's initial interrogation where he lied. And they will ask the jury to convict him not just for the death, but for the brutality that preceded it. The defense will likely try to suppress the video or argue context. They might claim the beating was mutual aggression, a common, often victim-blaming tactic, or that the fall was indeed a separate event from the hallway fight. But the timeline is tight. The window of opportunity for her to calm down and jump is non-existent. The prosecution's narrative will be that the violence in the hallway was the beginning of the end, and the fall was the final blow of a continuous assault. This case serves as a grim reminder of the reality behind the filters. On social media, Maria Catiane was smiling, posing, chasing a dream. In the hallway of her building, she was fighting for her life. It reminds us that we never truly know what happens behind closed doors. It also highlights the vital importance of surveillance technology in modern investigations. Without those cameras, Alex might still be in Cratius, playing the grieving widower, perhaps eventually moving on to another woman. The camera stripped him of his mask. As we wait for the trial date to be set, the community of Cratius mourns. A daughter who left to conquer the world returned in a coffin, accompanied by her killer. It is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions, played out in the modern setting of a high-rise city. We will continue to follow the legal developments of this case. Will the jury convict? Will the sentence reflect the brutality of the crime? And most importantly, will Maria Catiane's story save someone else? If you are watching this and you recognize the signs of control, of jealousy, of violence in your relationship or in the relationship of someone you love, please seek help. The difference between a survivor and a statistic can sometimes be a single phone call, a single intervention. Maria Catiane Gomes da Silva, 25 years old, a dreamer, a daughter, a victim. We speak her name so that she is not forgotten. We tell her story so that the truth prevails over the lies of the man who tried to silence her. If this investigation resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to Brazil's Crime Vault. Your support helps us document more cases with care. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think drives a person to fake mourning after committing such a crime? We want to hear your perspective.